Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics, Thursday, March 24th. Wild times out there in the world, as does seem to be the case in not just the gold and silver markets, but a lot of unusual things going on. We have supply chains fragile already. I'm getting a bit concerned when I hear the things that are going on in the wheat market or the corn market or fertilizer, and then you factor all of that in, wonder how the world is going to shake out. So, quite fortunate though to be here, healthy and happy in the sun today, and joined by the legend, Dave, Investment Research Kranzler. Dave, been a while since we've had you on here, so it's great to see your face, and you're even smiling today, which is nice. So, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing okay. Good to be back on here, Chris. Good to see you look happy and healthy.
Yeah. Well, it's been an adventure, but been getting the body healed up, and nice to be in the sun. And joined also with Jorge Ganoza of Fortuna Silver. One of the people we're going to be counting on. Jorge, you've got your work cut out for you because now, in addition to the suppressed price, and now if you can even get the equipment you need, so if people want to use computers and electronics going forward, I would suggest they say a nice special thank you to Jorge. And I thank you for being here, and also a new sponsor to this show. So I appreciate your support, and great to have you. And how are you doing today?
It's a pleasure to be here and happy to share my 2 cents on the discussion here.
Yeah, well, there is a lot going on. Now, I know you guys had some news out in the last day, some results that you put out, and an interesting situation. I'm going to pull your chart up here as well as the silver price, because we'll be careful how we phrase things. Don't, although it seems like the Wall Street beast wasn't exactly getting your news spot on, shall we say. And interesting situation. I know Dave was confused even on this one early this morning. So we'll dig into that and much more in the silver world, where perhaps to start with on the Kitco chart, big spike up there. And Dave, do you have any thoughts? I mean, there's a million reasons why silver would be up. Why today versus any other day? Or what are your thoughts on today's spike in the silver price?
That's a good question. And then I have just a quick answer a quick question for Jorge after I answer. But it was interesting to me because all of a sudden, out of the blue, both gold and silver started rallying like crazy after the New York Stock Exchange closed yesterday. And I would say about 25 to 30% of the price increase in both those metals came after the New York Stock Exchange closed. And why that's strange is because at that time of day, the only thing trading globally is electronic COMEX contracts, volumes low. The COMEX closes at 1:30 Eastern time. And normally that's a period of time when the metals kind of stagnate price wise, or they actually get pushed down because it's low volume. So, and they just went up relentlessly after the New York Stock Exchange closed. And I couldn't find any direct explanation for it. I think maybe it's just kind of, I think the fact that price inflation is going to get a lot worse going forward than the central banks, especially the Fed, wants us to believe, or that a lot of people are in denial of, or they're hopeful of, that it won't happen. Of course, we know that hope's not a valid investment strategy. So anyway, and also there's obviously the argument that gold and silver are mispriced to the downside anyway, relative to all financial assets and relative to the massive reservoir of fiat currency that's been printed over the last 24 months. The question that I kind of had for Jorge, and then I'd love to get into Fortuna's fourth quarter and full year numbers and what things look like going forward, is obviously I'm sure you're aware of what happened with nickel on the London Metal Exchange, and it's now happening with zinc. And to the extent that silver is also a I mean, it's first and foremost a monetary metal and a currency. And but it has industrial uses. So in that sense, it's also an industrial commodity. Do you think that what we saw happen in nickel and now happening in zinc, do you think that could happen in the silver market?
Yes. Short answer is yes. And to add to the more fundamental discussion on the drivers for silver, I'm not a technical specialist, chartist by any chance, but I do follow some of them, and there's been a very interesting technical formation on signaling that we're about to see a break to the upside on the price, no? So I think we are getting all sorts of signals to a strong break on the upside from the charts, from the fundamental analysis. Absolutely. The type of inflation we're seeing across the entire bag of goods, consumables, the geopolitical uncertainty. No, I think everything is signaling to a strong break to the upside.
Jorge, makes a lot of sense what you're saying there. Unfortunately, the Federal Reserve's Neil Kashkari was surprised inflation was so high and that it stayed so high. Now, Dave, I see you already chuckling over there. Jorge, I could go look back at the record. I mean, you've been coming, this is at least over a year since the first time you came on the show. And I'm pretty sure we talked about how inflation was going to be high back then. Well, Ben Bernanke, Janet Yellen, whichever puppet they have in there now, was saying that they have it under control. And now they're still surprised. So, Dave, you're going to have to wait. Let Jorge take first crack at I'll call it a victory lap on your behalf. But Jorge, what was it that allowed you to sense that inflation was going to be this issue it's developed into, whereas apparently everyone at the Federal Reserve and all political institutions have been just, perplexed to unravel this enigma?
I mean, just like anybody who goes to the supermarket, I mean, we're all feeling the pinch, right? I mean, you don't have to be a big guru here. Let me share with you that we're constructing building a mine in West Africa. And we put together a feasibility study that was updated in early January, February of 2021. And, end of Q1 2021 was updated. By July, the team was ready to go into construction. And we said, wait, let's make a pause and take a time to really look deep into inflation drivers and let's try to make sure that we're bringing everything that we can get in our field of view with respect to inflation expectations and risks. So as a result of that exercise, we had to bring $24 million into the budget for the construction of that mine. So our total budget today is 173 million, no? So it was originally $140+ million budget that moved up to 173. Why? Because steel more expensive, copper more expensive, freight, freight charges through the roof, longer timelines for delivery, because there is a point where it's not just about the price, it's about availability of the goods, right? And I think we're getting, as we're seeing, to that stage, right? There is a point where it doesn't matter how much you pay, it's just not available, right? We monitor inflation closely, as you can imagine. We have put in place some hedges for diesel to protect ourselves on our more sensible operations to diesel consumption. And but there is only so much you can do, no? Yeah. So far, I just went through a review of our inflation index across all sites for the main consumables: cyanide, diesel, steel, explosives. No, Ukraine, a big source of ammonium nitrate, key consumable, key basic product for AMFO and explosives that we use. So we read about wheat, no, but there are many other things that are currently challenged also by the geopolitical situation. So I think everything is going through the roof right now. Based on our expectations for the year, we're still in line because again we budgeted for these increases. But if things continue to ramp up over the short term, no doubt we're going to see higher prices and impact on cost. Today, we're not seeing the impact of cost, but because again, we were very aggressive with our inflation expectations 6 months ago, right?
Dave, did you have a comment there?
I mean, I like that point about, Jorge reeled off several items that people don't see every day that are going up substantially in cost. And at some point, that price effect is going to wind its way down to the end user level, because these are all base commodity type things that are used in production, not just in mine building and mine production, but all kinds of wholesale level production activities. So and I just did a quick calculation. Essentially, you guys back in January budgeted for 17% price inflation, because that looks like about how much you increased your expense budget in the feasibility study versus the original. How come you guys can see this coming, and yet these so-called economic and financial experts like Neil Kashkari, how come they can't see that inflation coming?
Well, go ahead.
It's a loaded question, by the way.
Yeah. and I think here the big proposition that they are putting in front of all of us is that their hawkish comments on inflation rates are going to be able to curb this, and I think that's very questionable.
Yeah, you're not gonna curb the rate of inflation by raising the Fed funds rate 1/4 basis point or even 2%. I mean, so should we kind of transition into your fourth quarter earnings?
Sure, absolutely.
Well, actually, if I may set that up along the lines of what you were saying, Dave, because why can't Kashkari see that? I would suggest, it's the same reason that Ross Behnam can't see the evidence of blatant silver manipulation. I mean, they're often busy in the plunge protection team boardroom meeting, propping things up, as Dave, I know you're well familiar with on Wall Street, which leading into your question there is, another one through all this inflation, which normally when interest rates rise, it's hurts the balance sheet of companies, yet we see stocks soaring. I mean, I can only imagine what NVIDIA, Logitech, and Uber and Cleveland Cliffs did that leave the NASDAQ up 1%. Whereas on the other hand, we have Jorge turn in a pretty nice quarter, actually making profit, which I know is foreign in today's Wall Street environment. Yet interesting situation where it seems like some of those algos may have gotten an incorrect headline. So Jorge, can you walk through what happened today? I'll put your earnings call up here as well. And maybe you can, with that said, walk people through what happened on a rather unusual morning for your company in the trading market.
Yes, no, I mean, today we experienced something that's, the only word that comes is disgusting, right? I mean, for the first hours of market trading this morning, Stockwatch, which is a Canadian portal, posted an erroneous heading of our year-end results, saying that Fortuna lost $59 million in 2021, when in reality, we earned $59 million. There were no losses here. We had a very strong end of the year, record-breaking production at our mines, record-breaking earnings, and we're looking for the idiot who did this at Stockwatch, right?
Now, Dave, you're familiar with today's investment culture where a lot of exchange stabilization fund investors like buying into companies that have no earnings or only lose money. But here we can see the chart, certainly the market reacting harshly with Fortuna down 5.6% on earning $59 million. And I know you're aware of how sometimes these algorithms are just reading headlines. There's not even a person seeing that. So anything you could comment on there?
I mean, first off, I would say, especially in the pre-market trading activity, I think a lot of the selling was just coming from retail investors, reacting to the headline. I think there's also, they've programmed that these hedge fund algos are incredibly sophisticated now. They scan Twitter, they scan every news service, and all they do is look at headlines, and they react to the headlines. So these algos see, Fortuna lost $59 million. Boom. They automatically go and start selling stock or even shorting shares. And I think that's a big part of what happened as well. So, I don't want to jump into conspiracy theory conversation here, but I can't think of a time when I've read about Stockwatch posting the exact opposite in calling it a loss as opposed to, positive net income. And, I'm almost wondering if someone was at Stockwatch was fed that headline, but, that's for another day.
Yeah. Fortuna had a record-breaking quarter, $199 million in sales, which is a 92% increase over Q4 of last year. We reported our net income at $16 million, but we had a series of items that we adjusted. If we look at the adjusted net income, it was $29 million, or adjusted EBITDA at $90 million. Free cash flow from ongoing operations during the quarter came in at $31 million. So all in all, just a very robust quarter. Our new operating mine, Lindero, had a record production of 36,000 ounces. Our all-in sustaining cost in Lindero for the quarter was under $1,000. Our highest cost mine in the period was Yaramoko, which produced gold. At that mine, we produce gold, not silver. But we produced at $1,400 gold in the quarter, which was above, for the year, it was more like $1,300. For the quarter, $1,400. But all of our mines run with strong margins. Our EBITDA margin in the quarter was 45%. For the year, 47%. So really a strong end of the year that sets us up for a robust 2022 and being able to capture the benefits of these high prices with robust gold and silver production.
Yeah, and Dave, before you comment on that, perhaps in your answer you could include that if you recall, this is back November 9th, 10th. That was the day we did a call with the three of us because there was an issue with the permit, which Jorge felt confident was going to get resolved. That Jorge got resolved. So basically, we have the stock up. I think it hits as high as 541 at some point there, but let's call it 525. Now we've had that issue, which my understanding was completely resolved, and then this issue pounding it again, another 5.6%. So based on the description of the earnings and you being an investor in this sector, where does that leave us?
Well, the company got the environmental permit situation resolved with the Semarnat down in Mexico, and the stock never really recuperated the price that it took from when that news hit the headline. Now, part of that is just because we went through a weak period in the market, and unfortunately, when that sell-off occurred, it was, the sector itself was weak, and so that kind of exaggerated the sell-off. And I mean, I guess, and I kind of wanted to bring this up with Jorge, correct me if I'm leaving anything out, but you guys had a lot of curveballs thrown at you in 2021. I mean, you had the Semarnat issue, you had the royalty settlement with the Mexican government, you had, Lindero was I wouldn't call it underperforming expectations, but it
was a challenge.
Absolutely. It was delayed because of the COVID issues. And then you had that, the closure at Yaramoko to replace the sag bearing. You got all that behind you. I mean, it seems to me like 2022 is going to be a lot more clear sailing for you.
I was blonde, not gray at the start of 2021. No? So we had the Roxgold acquisition. Anytime you give an arbitrage opportunity alone, that puts pressure on the stock, right? So we announced in April 2021 the Roxgold transaction. Yeah. We always knew it was a bold move. It's a move thinking medium long term, not short term. We always knew that, and we suffered. We suffered greatly. They took, anchor shareholders, more long-term investors, guys who work from the financial model and whatnot, got it immediately. But there was emotional trading around silver producer going to West Africa. Going to West Africa, what does that mean? For investors who are more comfortable with Latin America. So we went through all of that. Then we had the Semarnat issue, right? That was very difficult and trying times. So, I think as the graph that Chris was sharing, where we see Fortuna peaking at 550, I took that as a gain of momentum after the Roxgold acquisition, right? That's post the Roxgold, closing the Roxgold acquisition. The company was running on all cylinders. We started gaining momentum, and then the Semarnat issue. So I have to say that I believe there is some the word would be tired. There are some investors are tired, and rightfully so, with one issue and another issue. So in my mind, as responsible for the company, what we need to do is perform, deliver the ounces, deliver the financial results, and communicate, right? So something we've been waiting for anxiously is this publication of the financial results, so we can go out and today people are more amenable to meeting face to face and then re-engaging, being part of that broader market communication plan. And because the company is doing great. Fortuna has currently 3.3 million ounces of gold in reserves and almost 26 million ounces of silver in reserves.
That's more than the Fed.
No? So I feel great. And those are, costs that are from the middle to the lower end of the cost curve. No? So I feel very good about the business. It's about, delivering the results and getting all that noise and bad news just behind us. No? This is a difficult business, guys. You know that. We get thrown those left field, all the time. No? and but it is what it is, and that's why gold should be trading at $5,000 and silver at over 100. It's very difficult to get those metals out of the ground, believe me.
Well, Jorge, you were talking about this earlier, and while that might sound like a big price target to someone who's been watching too much CNBC and doesn't even pay attention to what the stock market has been doing, you did mention this nickel situation earlier. And again, as someone, you're in a company where you're seeing firsthand how these commodity flows go. I'm curious if either of you have, Dave, this might be more in your wheelhouse, but Nickel Tycoon covered part of his big short position this week. There I am, one of the first comments. So JP Morgan helped him drive the price of a commodity lower so he could cover his short and get bailed out. And here again, we have this price chart up 15% again today. So limit up. This happened yesterday too. I mean, the chart almost looks like a big middle finger to the reserve fractional bullion banking industry. But, what do you call that when the price goes up here, the LME closes the market, they canceled trades. They canceled trades up here. And then they did it again yesterday. So how are people supposed to, do that? I mean, now the price is lower. JP Morgan got bailed out of their loss by extending credit to a guy who was betting so big that he had to get bailed out of his loss. Dave, do you think we're seeing, we talked a little about whether this will spread, but I mean, this is a not ideal situation that can't be. I mean, Jorge, do you feel comfortable hedging with the LME if you need some nickel for anything you're doing?
I think we're in uncharted territory with respect to what prices can do and how can markets cope with this. No, I think we're going into uncharted territory. I can only agree with what you're saying. I mean, this that we are seeing, and the LME, an institution that, if the LME does that, what's left for everybody else, right? I think we're in uncharted territory in this type of pricing environment and expectations over the next months.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if that peak price reflects the true underlying condition of the physical nickel market, but certainly the low price down here didn't. And we find out that this Chinese magnate was stepping on the price by shorting LME futures against it. I will say
believe
that
his name is Big Shot, if you could use the
whatever his name
nomenclature.
I think, that bounce that you're seeing, that's telling me that we're going to see higher nickel prices ahead. But it also shows the duality in the market, because you've got a paper futures market versus the underlying physical market. And the paper futures market, especially in gold and silver, doesn't always represent the true fundamental picture of the underlying market. So, and that's why I had asked Jorge if he thought that what we saw in nickel and now in zinc could happen in silver. And I mean, it was a loaded question, because I think it's only a matter of time before we see that happen on the COMEX with gold and silver. We already saw it once in 1980.
I think we're in uncharted territory with respect to what can happen and the capacity of these exchanges and whatever to cope with it, right? Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Do we have time? I just had a couple more questions about the Fortuna, not necessarily the rear view mirror numbers, but going forward.
Sure.
So one of the things that I had come across in the internet is some people, not me, because I don't look at it the way a lot of people do. Some people were kind of disappointed in the 43-101 resource estimate you released. And as I dug into the matter, it turns out that you guys kind of had to cut back your CapEx budget for brownfield explorations while you were ramping up Lindero and getting Lindero built. Can you talk about that and about your CapEx budget for exploration going forward?
Yes. People forget that this is an ever depleting business, right? Every ounce we get from this is not growing vegetables, or wheat. So this is an ever depleting business. So the amount of money that the business requires to replace what we consume alone is significant, right? So as I said, what I am excited about is that today under inventories, we have 3.3 million ounces of gold in reserves. It's an 81% increase over what we had last year. And on silver, we had a reduction of around 10% in our reserves to about 26 million ounces, right? So yes, like you pointed out, our exploration investment over the last 3 years had to be pared down. We usually invest on good years. Our business needs about 4% of sales back into exploration. For other industries would be like, how much do you invest in research and development as a percentage of sales, right? For us, it's exploration. So over the last 3 years, our investment rate has been around 2% of sales, even slightly below 2 in a year. Why? Because we were allocating capital towards the construction of a mine, of a newer mine, which this quarter delivered record production at 36,000 ounces of gold that costs all-in sustaining costs below $1,000. So this year, all those capital investments are largely behind. Although we still have a large capital budget, the company is different. So we have taken our investment or exploration budget back at around 4.5% of sales, as you know, using budget prices, which are lower than spot. And that's about a $29 million budget. And we are investing, 50,000 meters of drilling that are going to replace reserves at, the mines that need it the most, which are those vein type underground mines like Yaramoko and San Jose. Financial analysts, they say past performance is no measure of future success when they talk to new clients and they show their, their financial returns on their investment portfolios. Past performance is no measure of future success. So, we have to say the same. We've been able to replace, when we put the San Jose mine into production, it was back in 2011, and it was a mine half of the size of what it is today, 1,500 tons per day, and had a 5-year life of mine. 10 years later, it's a 3,000 ton per day, so twice, double the size, and still has, 3 to 4 years of life of mine, right? So where does that come from? Exploration. And not every year you harvest results from exploration. You sometimes have dry spells. We've been going through a bit of a dry spell in San Jose, the same with Yaramoko. But we're putting the money, and we have some legitimate, exciting targets there. I cannot guarantee success, but you know what? It's the nature of the business. I mean, we cycle through the assets. There are some mines that were cornerstone assets some 5 years ago, and then there'll be a new mine, in this case, for example, Séguéla, that will be a cornerstone asset moving forward. No, and it's just the nature of the business. So I look at the reserves of the company, and the company has never exhibited the type of or size of reserve inventory we have today. 3 million ounces, 3.3 million ounces of gold and 26 million ounces of silver in reserves. That guarantees Fortuna will be producing metals for over a decade.
So one of the ways that I like to look at, analyzing whether or not I think there's going to be positive investment returns or alpha in a mining stock. And it's different when I look at an exploration stock versus, a mature mining company like yourself. But I wanted to point out that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that you're not allowed to talk about by regulation in a 43-101 disclosure. And it's a resource estimate. Now the reserves that's probably in the bank. And then you've got measured and indicated, and most of that will be moved up to reserve eventually. It costs money to do that, obviously. And then you've got the inferred resource. But what you really can't talk about is the greenfield prospects for the company. And I mean, when you really, especially now that I've spent quite a bit of time with Carlos going over exactly what you have in West Africa, it's like every time I look at it, it's like, holy crap, this was an ingenious acquisition. Maybe you can talk about, the exploration upside that you have in West Africa. And you can even point to Séguéla as an example with the Sunbird prospect.
Séguéla didn't exist 18 months ago, 24 months ago. It's located 2 kilometers from the mill site. 2 kilometers. No? And we have released a few weeks ago the first maiden resource. No, the first time we produce a resource for that deposit, 350,000 ounces in inferred. We continue drilling, and yes, I am limited to say, talk about other. What I think, 350,000 ounces is just the start. At that one deposit, around in the broader land package, and we have a camp. We control a camp. Séguéla is not one big deposit. For example, that's Lindero. Lindero is a large gold porphyry. Séguéla, within a trend, we have multiple deposits. Antena, Agouti, Kula, Ancien, Sunbird. And this one was discovered only 2 kilometers away from where the plant site and the camp is, right? So in the bigger land property package that stretches kilometers, we have right now an inventory of 40 drill targets, 40, that we have not gotten to yet, no? And am I gonna discover another Sunbird in each one of those? Likely not, but I think something is gonna come out of that for sure. I see Séguéla as a deposit that will be producing gold at low costs for well over a decade, and with significant potential for expansions based on what I see. And I've been doing this all my life. I'm not only a professional, but I was born at a mining camp. From my experience, that's what I see. Potential to expand this significantly and have really a cornerstone asset. I think we're just starting to see the start of it. The Rocks Gold team did an excellent job in acquiring this and advancing it, and we look to build on that.
Yeah, but I mean, Rocks Gold just isn't Yaramoko and Séguéla. I mean, you got Bosura, and then my understanding.
We have Bosura. We have a larger land package. I'll share with you something. You know who's the largest gold producer in the world?
Barrick.
As a nation, a country.
West Africa.
China.
Oh, China. Okay.
China. Like my daughters say we're going to share fun facts. China produces 380 tons of gold in 2020. These are 2020 figures. If we group the gold production of Ghana, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Southern Mali, Guinea, which is as an area that would fit within the great state of Texas. That's the surface area of all of those countries put together would fit within Texas. That area alone produces 366 tons of gold a year, making it the second largest gold producer in the world. And people don't realize that, no? That small geographic area produces more gold than the entire United States, the entire Australia, the entire Russia. People don't realize that. And you don't do that only with geologic potential. You also need governments that support over time, the continued development of responsible mining. And that's what we find in West Africa. And that's why we believe anyone who's serious about this needs to be there, right? So we're not the first one where, I mean, you have very successful companies, Barrick today, Randgold, and Endeavor Mining. And I mean, we're not discovering anything here. But people just don't realize that, no? That small is like the state of Texas would be the second largest gold producer in the world. No, that's the area that agglomerates those 5 little countries. No,
You're right. Most people don't realize it. I didn't realize. I knew West Africa was big, but I didn't realize how big it was. So I started looking at your acquisition of Rox Gold. The other thing that stands out to me is the grade of the resource. I mean, this is high grade gold, very high grade gold.
it's one of the richest gold endowments in the world. That Birimian greenstone belt is crazy rich, crazy rich. Easy to get gold fever there, crazy rich. Yeah.
And you guys don't you have a bunch of permits in Cote d'Ivoire for exploration?
We have additional land ground, and we have a dedicated team looking at new opportunities. And we find very supportive governments. That's key. No, very supportive governments. You know, there are very large pools of knowledge, clusters of industry support in terms of contractors, service providers, equipment providers, because it's a well-established mining area. It's the second largest producing region in the world, if we look at it from that perspective. So you find everybody who has to do with mining there. Most of them work out of Ghana, out of, Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire, but everybody's there. Caterpillar, Komatsu, contractors like Opodium, everybody's there. Everybody.
That's
We
incredible.
had opinion failure, like you mentioned. The opinion failure is a serious thing in a mill. It can put you down for many, many days. We were able to solve it in 4 days. We were serviced out of Ghana, up and running in 4 days. No? So it's a well-established mining jurisdiction. People just don't realize. They think of Africa as, I don't know, Timbuktu. No, it's not.
I remember that. Remember you
think-
had that question. If we have time, Chris, I just had one more quick question.
Sure.
Just because Jorge brought it up. The other thing that I think people don't understand, and it doesn't get discussed, at least in the research that I happen to look at besides my own, I discuss it, is Lindero. That land package has tremendous resource upside, is my understanding. Maybe you could talk about that.
When we acquired Lindero, it had Lindero is a porphyry and has a sister porphyry within our concession package called Arizaro. And in fact, the discovery of gold in that property was not at Lindero, was at the sister porphyry named Arizaro. The issue was that Lindero was so great on surface that everybody forgot quickly about Arizaro and moved to Lindero, right? But only 3 kilometers away from where the main deposit is, where we're currently mining, we have this other gold porphyry named Arizaro. When we acquired it, the company that we acquired it from, Mansfield, had at Arizaro 500,000 ounces of gold in inferred resources. That's what they reported. 500,000 ounces of gold. We decided to take it out of our books and not report it because we thought that a geologic model was a bit weak and the interpretation a bit audacious. But that doesn't take away that the gold was there. But we decided to take it out. We're back there drilling, and I look forward to share those results in a news release. Once again, these bounds that I have to advance to you, what is it that we're seeing there? But I look forward to sharing those results in an exploration update soon, because what we're finding is, consistent with what you would expect there. It's that we have a well-developed gold copper porphyry in many instances, similar to what we see at Lindero. And it's only 3 kilometers away. Lindero currently has reserves to produce gold for 13 years. Lindero, remember, this will be producing gold for 20 years, at least 20 years.
Chris?
Oh, all right. We had the mic muted there for a moment. Jorge, you mentioned earlier how in the financial industry, they have to say, well, past performance doesn't guarantee future results, and probably a good idea for around that bunch of characters. Yet I would say in mining, someone who actually knows what they're doing and has done this successfully. And I thought it was interesting how you mentioned, you grew up doing this. It was part of your family, especially where we're seeing the supply and demand numbers not matching here. Yeah, I mean, you can't guarantee what any particular deposit will be, but I would suggest finding people that actually know how to find silver and gold is perhaps, you can't guarantee a stock price, but a pretty important starting point in any sort of metals investment.
People are key in any industry, right? But the challenges in boom and bust industries like ours is finding the right people with the right experience, right? I challenge you to tell me how many young mining engineers do you know in your neighborhood, or when you speak with young people, how many are going into mining? Probably not many, huh? So getting talent into the industry. So talent is a bottleneck. Yeah, finding good people with the years of experience is difficult. And for example, we have a very interesting program where every year we do a selection in different universities and offer a 2-year mentoring and training program for recently graduates. And we tour them through the different mines around the world and whatnot. Because, there is a talent. We're talking about shortage of copper and zinc, and there is shortage of experienced people in the industry as well. Absolutely, Chris. Getting the right people is paramount. This is a difficult business. Many disciplines have to come together. Many disciplines have to come together in order to have success. Many. Metallurgists, geologists, geostatisticians, mining engineers with different skills. Of course, your regular human resources, administration, accounting, finance, lawyers, everybody needs to pull together to get one of these ones come through. Right? Government relations these days, meeting ESG demands. We are measured against heightened standards on everything from how much water we consume to how much energy we consume and how much of this or that. So, I mean, it's interesting. We never get bored here.
Yeah, and Jorge, it was also interesting when you mentioned, having cash flows or in 5 or 10 years. And I'm thinking, all right, the gold price, 1900, 1950, whatever it is now. I mean, you look at what's happening in the world as we're talking, this headline pops in: Biden, food shortages have been discussed by leaders, is real. So these guys know what's coming. We know the only thing they know how to do is print more money. So again, certainly this is beyond tragic and unfortunate. But then, when we go back to the silver price at $25, even while gold's 1900, at least from the standpoint of what can you do about it, I think you've positioned Fortuna, for the reasons you've been describing, to at least make the best of that situation as it is. And I know Dave has to get running, and we're almost out of time, but perhaps you could let folks know if they have questions, if they want to get more information. I know you did a call earlier today that went into some of these topics more in depth, but what is the best way to reach you guys?
Well, info at Fortuna Silver Mines, and Carlos Vaca, our Director of Investor Relations, will be prompt to reply to you. That's the easiest one. And just as a closing comment, I'm very bullish on silver and commodities for all the reasons we discussed and I subscribe to. But it is my job to make sure that we have assets and production in place that can provide optionality to you as an investor. That means that if silver will get to $100 and gold to 5,000, it will. So at some point, I don't know when, but in the meantime, if it takes a while of we're wrong for a period of time, you don't want your mines to go broke, right? So in Fortuna, we focus on sustainability of the business over time, right? On assets that can perform throughout the precious metals price cycle. That is my duty, no? And my commitment to my investors is to put together a company that can thrive throughout the precious metals price cycles, no? And that's where I leave it.
Well, I appreciate that, Jorge. I think you've done pretty well. Again, as more of a silver analyst than a mining stock analyst, it's nice because I know this is Dave's expertise and can see it at a higher level than I can. Although, Dave, that's why I appreciate you being here. Dave, you can find at Investment Research Dynamics, which is also in the link in the description field below. And Dave, any final thoughts about silver, what you saw today about Fortuna, anything that Jorge had to say, or my suggestion to Carlos Baca to just changing his last name to Carlos Fortune, which, is just Carlos, maybe Silver as a middle name, but any parting thoughts for you, Dave?
Yeah, I just wanted, Jorge, thanks for making the time to come on here with us. And I just wanted to say that, one of the things that attracts me to Fortuna and any company for that matter, and it's something I actually learned from my father, is you have to look at management first and foremost. And in my opinion, I'm not blowing smoke here, Jorge is probably one of the straightest shooters at CEO in any company that I've ever covered or any CEO that I've met. And, I mean this when I say it, they do not promote or hyper promote what they have. And for me, that I really respect that. So again, thanks for making the time. And Chris, thanks. And thanks to Carlos for putting this together.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you. I value that. Thank you.
Well, thank you both for being here. And also, how about right before we wrap up, a quick thank you to a few important people in the audience, because while what Dave and Jorge are doing both important, I really, as time goes by, appreciate more that there need to be people out there listening that are taking this information in their own lives. So Butch Michael, thank you for being here, along with Jenny Alicia, Albert S., Kathleen, Gary Ride, Steve Bond, and everybody else who believes in silver and what it stands for and admires the men like Dave and Jorge who have pledged their careers in not the easiest of conditions. But Jorge, again, I think it's worth noting that, there's not a lot of people like you that have the skill set, the knowledge, and then, that's important, but also the strength to go through these tougher times, which is why it's quite a pleasure to have you guys involved with the show. And we'll be bringing folks a lot more coverage of what you're doing, which it's nice because you just make your plan, you follow through on it. It's Dave, imagine if we could somehow bet the if there was Joe Biden silver and we could go the long short trade, long Fortuna, short Joe Biden. Although we will leave that there. Thank you all for being here, and Jorge, we'll look forward to following how you guys navigate things going forward. But appreciate you being here on an interesting day and some successful results.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you.
All right. And thank you, Dave. And with that said, fellas, we will wrap up for now, but appreciate you all being here.
Thanks, Jorge.
Thank you, guys.